Jason McMillan's therapy dog was falsely labeled a dangerous wolf by his HOA president, Claire Rutledge, triggering threats of federal action. Claire's crusade wasn't about safety. It was a personal vendetta to force a veteran out of her pristine neighborhood. But Jason had a powerful move. Federal law and expert proof were on his side. And just wait until you hear how this battle ended, with justice served in the most public way. When Jason McMillan adopted Daisy, he believed he was finally turning a page. After 3 deployments as a combat medic in Afghanistan, Jason had been carrying wounds no doctor could stitch, memories that came in waves, panic that struck without warning. Daisy, a large Alaskan Malamute mix with soft eyes and an even softer temperament, had been trained by a therapy program that matched rescue dogs with veterans. For Jason, she was more than a pet. She was the reason he could step outside each day. Maple Ridge Estates looked like the perfect place to start over. A clean, quiet suburban neighborhood tucked into the Carolina foothills, neatly trimmed lawns, white picket fences, and cheerful porch swings. On move-in day, Jason noticed the HOA sign near the entrance. Preserving the safety and beauty of our community. It sounded reassuring, even welcoming. For the first few months, life was uneventful in the best way. Jason and Daisy developed a routine. Morning walks, afternoons at the dog-friendly park, peaceful evenings in their small backyard. Neighbors seemed friendly enough, though a few glanced uncertainly at Daisy's size when they passed. Jason shrugged it off. People sometimes mistook big northern breeds for something more intimidating. It wasn't the first time. But 3 months in, that easy peace shattered. It was a crisp Saturday morning. Jason returned from the grocery store, balancing a bag of supplies and a coffee, when a flash of bright color caught his eye. An orange paper was taped crookedly to his front door. The bold black headline hit him like the punch: Notice of violation, wildlife possession infraction, unlawful harboring of a wolf. He froze. For a moment his mind refused to process it. Wolf? His eyes scanned the rest of the notice, heart racing. Per community reports and board review, the animal in question constitutes an unlicensed wild predator under HOA Code 17B. Immediate removal required. Non-compliance will result in enforcement action through state and federal wildlife authorities. Jason's hands began to shake. This had to be a mistake, a bad one. He rushed inside and knelt beside Daisy, who thumped her tail lazily on the floor, entirely unaware of the storm about to break. Grabbing his phone, Jason dialed the HOA office. The line rang once, twice, then a clipped voice answered. Maple Ridge Estates Association, said Claire Rutledge. Jason took a breath. This is Jason McMillan, Lot 27. I just found a notice on my door about my dog. Oh, yes, Mr. McMillan, Claire interrupted smoothly. We've had multiple complaints. Several board members have personally observed a wolf on your property. For the safety of the community, you must remove the animal by Friday. Jason blinked. Ma'am, that's not a wolf. She's a registered therapy dog. Alaskan Malamute mix, adopted from Carolina Veterans Rescue. There was a pause. Then Claire spoke again, voice cool as glass. I'm afraid the board has already made its determination. You'll need to comply. The call ended before Jason could protest further. He sat there, stunned, the phone still in his hand. This wasn't some confused neighbor. The HOA president herself was pushing this false claim and threatening federal action. That night, Jason barely slept. His mind raced with questions. How could anyone believe Daisy was a wolf? Why were they targeting him? What if officials actually got involved? But by morning, the nightmare deepened. The next blow landed less than 24 hours after the notice. Jason was preparing Daisy's breakfast when a knock rattled the front door, loud, deliberate. Peering through the peephole, he saw 2 unfamiliar men in dark uniforms with bright compliance officer patches sewn on their chests. Cameras dangled from their necks, clipboards in hand. Jason opened the door just a crack. One of the men smirked. We're here to document the illegal wolf on your property, he said, as if reading from a script. Jason's pulse spiked. She's not a wolf. You're not stepping inside." The second man, expressionless, began taking photos through the door frame. Fuming, Jason slammed the door shut and drew the curtains. Through a narrow gap, he watched as the pair paced his front yard, snapping pictures of Daisy, who now stood quietly behind the window, her head tilted in confusion. They stayed 15 minutes before leaving, but Jason knew this wasn't over. By late afternoon, the real damage began. His phone buzzed with a message from a neighbor. "You need to check the HOA group, now." Jason's stomach dropped as he opened the Maple Ridge Estates Facebook page. The top post, authored by none other than Claire Rutledge, read in bold letters, "Community Safety. Alert unlicensed wolf confirmed on Maple Lane. After extensive review and multiple expert identifications, your HOA is taking action to protect the safety of children and pets. We urge all residents to remain alert and avoid the vicinity of Lot 27. Underneath, the photos taken that morning had already been uploaded. Daisy's image frozen mid-yawn, her thick fur catching the sunlight. The captions read, "Dangerous predator loose on Maple Lane, and why is this allowed in our neighborhood?" Jason's heart pounded with a mixture of disbelief and fury. He scrolled through hundreds of comments. Some neighbors asked reasonable questions, but many bought into the hysteria, calling for Daisy to be removed or worse. When Jason took Daisy for her usual walk that evening, the change was stark. Parents hustled their children indoors. One woman crossed the street, glaring at him as she passed. Conversation stopped mid-sentence when Jason approached. The final blow came by mail. A certified letter from the HOA attorney arrived the next morning. "You are hereby notified that failure to remove the identified wild animal will result in fines of $1,000 per day, commencing immediately. Further, the HOA has referred this matter to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service." Jason stared at the words, his fists clenching involuntarily. That was the moment his hatred crystallized, not just for Claire Rutledge, but for every enabler on the board who allowed this farce to continue. He poured his anger into research. Over the next few nights, Jason reviewed every HOA document he could legally access, meeting minutes, complaint records, emails posted in public archives, and buried in a digital folder from 2 months prior, he found it. A note from Claire in the board meeting. Transcript. "We must address the large, unsightly dog at Lot 27. It makes our community look low class and intimidating. No place for that here." Not a word about wildlife. Not a word about public safety. It wasn't about Daisy. It wasn't about wolves. It was about control, and the fact that Jason, a disabled veteran with a therapy dog, didn't fit Claire's narrow vision of her perfect neighborhood. Jason's blood boiled, and for the first time since the fight had started, he resolved to strike back. By now, Jason's quiet shock had hardened into resolve. Claire had gone too far, and this time he wasn't going to fight with words alone. He started with the people who knew Daisy best. Jason called the Carolina Veterans Rescue Agency, where he had adopted her. Within hours, their director sent him a thick folder of documentation: Daisy's adoption certificate, breed evaluation, veterinary records, all confirming she was a purebred Alaskan Malamute mix, not a wolf or wolf hybrid. Included was a separate certificate of her therapy animal registration issued by the state after she passed specialized training. It was solid proof, but Jason knew it wouldn't be enough to silence Claire. Next, he called an attorney, a sharp, methodical lawyer named Ben Keller, who had handled HOA abuse cases before. When Jason explained the situation, Ben didn't hesitate. "This isn't about dogs," Ben said. "This is about someone trying to run you out using fear. But if they've involved federal agencies based on lies, they're stepping into very dangerous territory." Together, they crafted the next move. Ben recommended bringing in an independent expert, a federally certified wildlife biologist whose word would hold weight if the situation escalated to court or government review. That's how Jason met Dr. Laura Jensen, a soft-spoken but formidable biologist with decades of experience in canid identification. Dr. Jensen came to Jason's home for a thorough evaluation. Daisy greeted her with gentle curiosity, tail wagging. Over the next 2 hours, Dr. Jensen performed detailed measurements, behavioral assessments, and genetic sampling. Her report, when it arrived 3 days later, was crystal clear. No morphological, genetic, or behavioral evidence indicates this animal is a wolf or wolf hybrid. It is a domestic dog classified as Canis lupus familiaris, specifically a purebred Alaskan Malamute mix. Dr. Jensen didn't mince words. The report also included a section condemning the dangers of falsely reporting domesticated animals as wildlife threats, something federal authorities take seriously. Armed with this ammunition, Jason and Ben sent a formal cease and desist letter to the HOA and Claire personally. The letter laid out the facts, demanded a public retraction of the false claims, and warned that further action would trigger legal consequences. But instead of backing down, Claire escalated the fight. In a new post on the HOA Facebook group, Claire declared, "Despite pressure from certain residents, the board has already contacted federal wildlife authorities regarding this wolf. We will not be intimidated or silenced. The safety of our children comes first." Jason's jaw clenched as he read the words. Claire had just put herself in legal jeopardy and didn't even seem to realize it. Ben explained the critical point. Knowingly filing a false wildlife claim with federal authorities was a direct violation of 16 U.S.C. Section 3372D, a federal offense carrying serious penalties. Jason felt a new kind of calm settle over him. This was no longer just an HOA scuffle. Claire had crossed into federal jurisdiction. Together, he and Ben prepared their next move. They compiled a dossier. Claire's public Facebook posts, board meeting minutes referencing the wolf, Dr. Jensen's expert report, and Daisy's full certification records. They also included a sworn affidavit from the rescue agency. Ben drafted a formal complaint and sent it directly to both the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the U.S. Attorney's Office for their district. Jason signed the affidavit with steady hands. Now, the board's false claims were no longer just a local smear campaign. They were part of an official federal investigation. Jason had done everything he could. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself a deep breath. Now he waited. 2 weeks passed in tense silence. Jason kept his walks with Daisy short and quiet, avoiding further conflict while the federal investigation moved forward. Neighbors continued to whisper, their eyes flicking between Daisy's calm presence and the latest online speculation. Some had begun to doubt the HOA's narrative. Others still clung to fear. Then, on a bright Monday morning, change arrived, quietly at first. 2 unmarked vehicles pulled up in front of the Maple Ridge Estates HOA office. Out stepped a pair of federal agents, their jackets bearing the unmistakable seal of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They entered the office without fanfare, but word spread fast. A small crowd gathered on the sidewalks as phones buzzed with updates. Inside, Claire Rutledge had no time to prepare. Her confident smile faltered as the agents presented their credentials and calmly explained the situation. Knowingly making false statements to federal wildlife authorities. Attempting to interfere with the legal use of a registered service animal. Claire's earlier bravado was nowhere to be found. It turned out that she had indeed submitted official written statements to the federal agency, claiming Jason was harboring a dangerous, unlicensed wolf. The problem? Every single claim was proven false by documented expert reports and state records already in federal hands. For a federal offense involving wildlife reporting fraud, intent matters. Claire's own public posts and HOA meeting records made that intent crystal clear. When the agents escorted her outside in handcuffs for further questioning, the crowd gasped. Several neighbors who had once posted angry comments now stood in stunned silence. Some pulled out their phones to record the scene, a stark reversal from the fear-mongering days just weeks before. The HOA's lawyer tried to contain the fallout, issuing a hasty statement that the board would cooperate fully. But it was far too late. By the next morning, local news cameras lined the entrance to the neighborhood. A prominent segment aired across the state. HOA president faces federal charges over veteran service dog. False reporting of wildlife threats and interference with a therapy animal spark public outcry in Maple Ridge Estates. Public sympathy shifted hard in Jason's favor. Veterans groups, therapy dog advocates, and civil rights organizations rallied behind him. Messages of support poured in. At the next HOA meeting, now held under the watchful eye of a federal observer, a new motion was brought forward. The result was swift. Claire and several complicit board members were formally removed from their positions. The motion passed overwhelmingly. Jason's legal team also negotiated a formal settlement. The HOA would cover all of Jason's legal fees. The HOA would issue a public written apology to Jason and the rescue agency. The HOA would commit to new transparency and accountability standards to prevent future abuses of power. When the apology letter arrived, Jason read it once, then folded it neatly away. Not for revenge, but for closure. The next morning, he and Daisy resumed their familiar walk through the neighborhood. This time, the difference was unmistakable. Neighbors smiled and waved. Parents who once hurried their children away now greeted Jason warmly. Daisy trotted beside him, tail wagging, unaware that she had become the calm center of a battle that had shaken the entire community. And as Jason glanced down at her, he allowed himself a quiet smile. Justice had been served.